Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Laura. We just had a lovely little tech glitch, but here I am on live talking about workplace wisdom with you today. And I started to think about this idea of workplace wisdom and being able to answer questions from you about issues you're facing, whether it's with a toxic boss, whether it's issues with your career development, challenges you're facing at work. There's just a lot of things going on. And I hear a lot of these from our clients at Canada Career Counseling. And I just wanted a forum to be able to provide my perspectives. And I always thought it would be fun to have a call-in radio show and answer questions in real time. So this is the next best thing for now. And we did collect some questions from you. Thank you to those who submitted questions. There were a number of them. So when I do these workplace wisdoms every month, I'll continue asking questions that you have and answering them in real time. And then these will be available afterwards for your viewing and listening pleasure. So, without further ado, what types of questions came in? So, I am looking at your questions now. And one of the questions was, I've been working hard for a promotion, asking for feedback, taking on cross-team projects, building my strategic skills, but my boss keeps saying, "You're doing well. Just keep doing what you're doing." And I know every company has its realities, but how do you know when it's time to move on? Well, that is a fantastic question. And we get that from a lot of our clients where they're putting in the extra effort. They're very intentional about developing themselves and their career, yet they're just not getting the promotion. So, first and foremost, the fact that you have been bringing this up to your boss, that you have been asking for these opportunities and jumping in and taking on the opportunities to grow and to enhance your skills, that's an important first step. So, I always say if you want to keep growing in your career, you need to put yourself out there. You need to be doing things to show that you're willing to expand your skill sets, expand your knowledge. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. And that can be taking on new projects, taking on what we call stretch assignments, tasks and projects that use different skills and help you develop. Now, I mean, it is a tricky economy out there. So your boss may be totally supportive of you developing and promotions and such, but there just isn't the opportunity in the organization. Sometimes, though, it can be that the boss is just paying lip service and saying it, but really doesn't see you having what it takes to move to that next level. And I always say that part of becoming a boss or a leader is being able to have those courageous conversations where you say, you know what? I don't see you as being the best fit for management. I see you as being the best fit for technical skills or for projects, but I don't see you moving into management. And here's why. I don't think it's a natural fit for you from what I've seen. And that conversation is a very difficult one to have for a manager. And in the end, a lot of managers don't give that feedback. And instead, they just have you think that you'll be promoted and they keep on pushing it forward. So it's like kicking the can down the road to deal with it later. So it could be that that's going on, or it could be that there truly are no opportunities. And then it's the P word. The P word is a tough word. Patience. And I've heard that so many times. Just be patient. You know, it'll take time. Just be patient. And that can really be hard on you, especially if you're a high achiever and you're motivated to move forward in your career. And then you have to determine at what point is it not about patience anymore, but it's about persevering to look at other opportunities. And only you will know the answer to this. So I always say, you can't control what goes on in the company. You can't control all these different factors, but what you can control is your own career development and getting into the driver's seat, I say, of your own career. And part of that is giving yourself a timeline. In my Toxic Boss book, I Wish I'd Quit Sooner, Practical Strategies for Navigating and Escaping a Toxic Boss, I talk about a GR date, or a good riddance date. And that's the date that you set at which point you will leave the company. And having this date is a great way to feel that you're in control, and you're going to give it a certain amount of time. You're putting in the energy and with optimism. And after that point of time, if it hasn't changed, you are exiting and doing something different. And that will involve, of course, having a plan, applying for other jobs, networking, and such. So I think giving yourself a timeline and having open communication with your leader about, okay, now is not the right time, but can we revisit this conversation in 6 months from now, in 12 months from now, just to keep the open lines of, you're ready for that next level, you're ready for that role, and you understand that it's not available right now, but when will it be feasible because you want to develop in your career? So I hope that that's helpful. I think it's so personal. Each case is very different. It depends on you and your situation. And as a career psychologist, we're always talking to people, getting to know their history, getting to know their attributes, their skills, their personality, their values. And then we're able to give more guidance, direction, coaching, and counseling to navigate these tricky situations, because they are tricky and they take courage, they take persistence, and they take trust in the process, but also knowing when to release and when to get into that driver's seat of your career and when to let go. Because sometimes it's just not meant to be in that organization. And sometimes you just have to move on and believe in yourself and believe in what you want to be doing next. And the grass can indeed be greener in other places. So that is the first question. I am going to move on to the next question now, which is, I've been thinking about leaving my job to start my own business, but it feels really scary and I don't know anyone who's done it before. How can I start to see entrepreneurship as something doable instead of intimidating? That is a great question. Entrepreneurship, it's scary. I'll just say that after having done it for 16 plus years. It's a roller coaster ride. There's ups and there's downs. And I was working with a CEO group yesterday. So they were all CEOs and founders of companies. And they all said the same thing. It's a roller coaster ride. And it feels sometimes like a game of whack-a-mole. So if you remember that Midway game, there's something here, there's an issue there. You got to hit that one. You got to get that one down. And there's never a dull moment. There's always something. And that's what entrepreneurship is. But the benefit is great flexibility, control. You have the ultimate control over you and what you do. And you can choose who to work with. You can choose who to hire. You can choose who not to work with. That is a real gift in these times. In these times of a lot of toxic workplaces out there, that is one of the biggest gifts. However, I always say that entrepreneurs have a certain DNA. They have a certain makeup. They have a higher risk tolerance. They're okay with taking a risk, and they're tolerant of ambiguity. They're okay with a fair degree of uncertainty, and they're okay with, they're good, not just okay. They're good with change, because entrepreneurship is constant change. Everything is pivoting. You need to be agile, and not everyone is good with that. Some of us like predictability, security, structure, and we like to be directed in terms of what way to go. Entrepreneurs, instead, it's an open canvas. If you think of a piece of art, it's an open canvas, and it can be daunting. And as an entrepreneur, you need supports around you. You need to bring on resources and people with the skills that you don't have. So for your question about you don't know anyone who's done it, I bet you do know people who have done it. If you think about your network as, who are the people I grew up with? Who did I go to school with? What are they doing now? Who are my neighbors? Okay, that's another one. If I'm in any extracurricular community activities, who are the people there? Who are my extended family? What are they doing? And you start to think of your network, and you can even map it out and say, okay, this person might know this person. And before you know it, you might think, oh, that's right. My uncle, he did this earlier in his career. He started this. So then you can go to uncle and ask uncle, what was it like making that transition to being an entrepreneur? What worked well? Do you have any regrets? What would you recommend to me? And again, the more people you can talk to about this, the better. And if you don't have people in your network, figure out what type of entrepreneurship you're interested in. Is it in a certain industry? For example, are you someone who works in, I don't know, I'm just making this up, communications, and you work for an organization, but you want to go out on your own and consult on communications yourself? So then you can look at, well, who else is doing that? Who else is doing that out there? And reach out to them and ask, could I have a conversation about your journey? And you may think, well, maybe they won't want to tell me because they're a competitor against me in my own city. Well, if you feel that, then look at another city, right? Look at somewhere else where they might not be directly competing as much against you. But I'm of an abundance mindset anyway. I think that there's enough for everybody, and it's better to share, collaborate with others in our domain rather than to come in with a mindset of pure competition, which actually puts walls around people. So, talking to people, asking what their journey has been like as an entrepreneur, and what to look out for, and what attributes of themselves helps them to get through being an entrepreneur. And when I think of myself, I think, gosh, I mean, one of them is resilience. So something nasty happens. So a surprise, right? And it's usually financials, to be honest, or people issues, one or the other. So you get a big surprise, you get slammed with an unexpected bill and you weren't expecting that. Or you get slammed with an employee issue. Someone has to go on leave, or they quit suddenly, or something that you never expected. And oh man, it's hard. You think, why is this happening to me? It's so unfair. And then I think I'm able to get out of that mindset by getting support, venting about it, maybe having a cry, maybe talking to my team, bouncing ideas off, strategizing. Then I pick up the pieces, I lick my wounds, and then I move on to, okay, how are we going to solve this? What's our strategy? What are we going to do next to get through this difficult period? Because it was an unexpected curveball, I call it. But the only way is to go forward as an entrepreneur. And I'm ultimately responsible for the business, for the team, for the team's livelihoods at this point. And I just need to lick my wounds, grieve the situation, maybe complain and vent, and then move forward. And 16 plus years into this, I tell you, that's happened a number of times. The pandemic was one of those times. The collapse of our economy in Alberta in 2014, 2015, that was another time. And the list goes on. So, that are some of my thoughts about entrepreneurship. I did a podcast interview and it was on employee to entrepreneur. That's the title of the episode. And it is a great discussion about this topic in more depth. And there's a journal that came with it that we talk about this journal and how you can put your entrepreneurial dreams onto paper, pen on paper. And I just think it was a really powerful episode for anyone who's considering entrepreneurship. So go on my podcast, and you can find all my episodes at www.drlaura.live/podcast. And you can also find my podcast, Where Work Meets Life, on all the podcast channels. And if you search employee to entrepreneur, you'll find that episode. It was a few episodes with Jana Boyko. And I just think that entrepreneurship is great, but not for everyone. Not for everyone. And if you're in a relationship, it's usually one person has more the stability, the stable career, and the other might be the entrepreneur. It's tougher to have both entrepreneurs, although I do see that as well. And you can end up supporting each other through the entrepreneurial journeys. But Again, it's not a one size fits all, and it's a certain type of DNA that makes you fare better with the uncertainty and the volatility of entrepreneurship. But you need to be quite self-directed too, by the way. So you need to be the opposite of a procrastinator, a self-starter. That really helps in the entrepreneurial world. And you need to be resilient and manage your stress and avoid burnout. So the list goes on, but now I'm getting out of scope for your question. Final question today is one that came from a session I did. And the session was on leading with compassion. And I got into the idea of how leading with compassion and creating a psychologically safe environment is so important these days, and how it's the opposite of toxic leadership and toxic workplace culture. And one of the participants brought up a question for me. And the participant said, there's a culture of self-victimization emerging as a trend in that organization, and that there's a lot of complaints made against managers, okay, and it might be bullying, harassment, those sorts of complaints. And when they are externally reviewed, so it goes through an investigation, a lot of them are unfounded, and it's creating a social currency of victimhood, and basically it's eroding the manager's mental health. So what they're saying is that there's this concept of upward bullying when you get toxic employees at play. So my answer to this was, of course, toxic workplace behaviors are at any level of an organization. They can be at the employee level, they can be any role whatsoever, can be a bully, can be narcissistic, can be harassing, can be difficult to work with. Uh, I chose to focus on toxic leadership for my upcoming book and for my research, because in a leadership position, you have ultimate responsibility over people. And if you're toxic, the ripple effect is huge, because it is a relationship that is unequitable, that you're in a position of power over people. So the toxicity makes it very difficult to escape for the people. Hence, my book about navigating and escaping a toxic boss. And I said, that's where I chose to focus. But what I'm saying is that toxic workplace behaviors at all levels are an issue. And yes, you can have toxic people who are filing complaints against their leaders that are unfounded, and they're causing drama, they're causing problems, they're causing stress for whatever reasons. And that is unacceptable as well. And that is another book. And there are other books out there around this topic. One of them, Jerks at Work, was one that I have on my shelf, talking about different toxic personalities at work. And that's just one of many. But I would say that that's a whole other topic. And yes, there can be cultures of bullying, and we need to have avenues that protect everyone from bullying, from harassment, from toxicity at any level of an organization, including leaders, because we're all vulnerable to being victims of these types of behaviors. And we need cultures that have zero tolerance policy for bad behavior or toxic behavior. And that starts with having clear policies on respectful workplace and clear avenues for whistleblowing and filing complaints. And I'm actually speaking at a conference around this whole topic of whistleblowing and speak up cultures. How you want to have a culture where people feel safe to speak up, and they know that if they speak up, they're not going to be risking their career, their livelihood, and their well-being. That speaking up is something that is supported and encouraged. But at the same time, when you have a speak up culture, you need to be careful that those complaints are vetted and validated, so we don't use them as weapons to get at other people or get back at other people. And the complaints are not valid and truthful and honest complaints. So there needs to be a process of vetting, validating, investigating, handling these complaints, because the complaints can actually cause more harm if they're unfounded. So, this is a meaty, thorny topic. I tell you that much. It is a topic that I'm continuing to deepen my knowledge in. And ultimately, we want a culture where people care for one another, where they feel safe to voice opinions, voice concerns, and that if there is a toxic hotspot that is damaging to people, damaging to their well-being, damaging to their productivity, that hotspot, it's like a, you know, burning, it's starting to burn and it could cause a fire. That hotspot is dealt with, and dealt with swiftly. That it's a swift process, and we can get into the bigger organizations that have lots of bureaucracy and everything moves slowly. And what happens when things move slowly is that the embers start to ignite, and then we have a forest fire. We have mass exodus. We have people leaving. We're losing talent. And perhaps even people are going on medical leaves because of the stress. And that is not good. We need to address toxic hotspots swiftly, and we need toxic bullying, harassing, dishonest type of behaviors that are frankly quite harmful to people. And this reminds me of a little story. So my brother had a cabin in Montana, and the cabin, one year there was a barbecue, and I guess the embers from the barbecue fell over into the forest. And rather than causing a fire right away, it went into the root system, and it was festering. And my sister was staying there with her young kids at the time. I'll never forget this story. And in the middle of the night, these roots gradually caught on fire, and then it shot up, and there was these massive flames all of a sudden. And she woke up in the night, to this commotion outside, and flames were licking up, and she had to get in the car, wake up the kids, and bolt to town. And this place was off the grid. It was about 25 minutes to town. And in those days, there were not cell phones like there are today. This is a long time ago, by the way. And she got there, and the fire department came, and they said, oh my gosh, that was close to the propane tank, because this place was propane powered, my brother's cabin in a lake in Montana. And the whole place almost went up in embers. Because it was the hot spot, and the hot spot wasn't addressed. And just like that hotspot, a hotspot in a toxic workplace is able to smolder when it's left unaddressed, and time passes, weeks turn into months, and then we have a full-blown forest fire. And it's not easy. This topic is not easy, but it needs to be addressed. So that's the answer to my third question today. Please keep sending me questions. I hope this is helpful. Let me know either way. I love to hear your comments. I'd love if you ask more questions to me. You can ask the questions in the comments here on whatever platform you're on. You can go onto my website, drlaura.live, which is my newly updated site. Fill out the contact us form. Ask your question there. Workplace wisdom with Dr. Laura. I'm happy to talk about most topics if I have expertise in them. Topics around your career, career development, navigating workplace politics, and toxic workplaces, toxic bosses. All of these topics are up for grabs, and 25 years in the field of psychology focused on career and workplace, I feel like I've seen a fair bit. I've experienced a fair bit. And if I don't know something, I won't answer it, but I will hope to bring value and bring my thoughts. And it's not easy in this world of work, but there are ways to make work and life better. We just need to be looking at today and looking at how we can continue being in the driver's seat of our own careers. So with that, I hope you stay well.